Yo guys, what up, Viper here, and today I'm gonna explain you how you can beat all the people that are just playing these Rhamphyre all-in teams on the ladder, and how you can literally just super easily free farm all of them. Now, let's just jump into the team, right? I think at this point, most of you probably have been like, okay, Rhamphyre is really good for one, and then the main counter to Rhamphyre is Dust. And then I guess the secondary main counter to Rhamphyre in the terms of, well, just surviving the big Phantom nuke or surviving the damage over time Inferno are shields. Because percentage health damage, shield/healing are the best counter. Now, getting shields tends to be easier in the game because Revenant, Enchanter, Mystic, there's just easier ways of getting a lot of shielding than there is a lot of healing. Because the healing would require you to be in a corner and then you die to Phantom, right? So essentially, shields, really good. Revenant, really good, because Rhamphyre tends to work together with like small rogues or other small units, and Rhamphyre is a very heavy Rhamphyre focused team, so a lot of resources put into that one unit, which means that the other units are kind of just fillers for trades, and they just are expected to die. They're not expected to keep surviving. And if they are expected to keep surviving, the whole team would be very expensive, and they would kind of fall apart versus a very rogue and damage focused team again, which again is this Revenant synergy. Let's just literally elaborate on this and how all of these things work, right? So we have Dust. And Dust got slightly buffed in this patch, and all the Dust units got slightly buffed in this patch. And Dust basically, whenever a Dust unit uses their Omega, then around themselves and around like what they move through in this like a rolling phase on the gyros, or when the ranger with the dagger jumps across the map and so on, everything that's like around them when they start and when they end their abilities is blinded and has their Omega power reduced until the end of combat. And it's reduced by 20 per unit. Now, if you play Revo and Gyro plus the Ranger, it's 3 Dust units, so on the first cast you can reduce units Omega power by literally 60. Well, they start at 100, Rhamphyre can get a little bit more with Search Module and Phantom, but it still usually means that Rhamphyre can't one-shot teams anymore. And on the other side, they also just do a lot of damage, and Rhamphyre is not the most tanky unit, and if Rhamphyre can't like one-shot a team and immediately heal up again, then it will probably die to the follow-up damage before it can get another ability off. That's why this Dust thing is really good. Now, Gyro is a Slayer and Revo is a Rogue. Slayer doesn't really help you in this setup. Revenant-Dust though. And the Revenant Illuvians, it's kind of the same thing, where with Dust, stacking more and more Dust Illuvians is really good because you can eventually reduce Omega power to 0, which means no damage at all. No damage at all, really insane thing. That's why some traits like Earth got very much nerfed, why we can't play triple fortification catalyst for grit and resolve buffs, because reducing damage to 0 is just crazy, right? That's why every game uses usually like percentage damage reduction, so things can't be at no damage dealt at all. Now with Dust, you can reduce enemy Illuvians that are on Omega power based literally out of the existence. They do nothing anymore. And then we talked about shields being very good against Rhamphyre. Well, the Revenant trait pretty much says if a Revenant Illuvia kills or helps killing a unit, then you get shields for all the units around that Revenant unit. Now, if your Ranger is jumping across the map and applying Dust and all those things, and Verminio and Vermilia with their big AoE abilities, they tend to just hit most of the enemy team that is around you, and then you get not one time that 200 shield value, but you get 600 shield for every unit that you kill. 600 shield, maybe 1200 shield if you kill 2 units into that Rhamphyre Omega. That Rhamphyre Omega won't kill your team anymore. So that is a crazy strong counter against that, especially because Rhamphyre tends to jump with like weaker units, right? You fill the team with a small unit, so you have a lot of traits active, and then you giga buff Rhamphyre with augments. But that is relatively weak versus Revenant because they just kill those small units. Revenant very good against Grokkos, for example, because Grokkos, they do tend to just die. They only have 1000 health. They are not these big Colossus, big verdant tanks that just keep surviving forever. One thing that I've realized in the videos I've been making is I always try to put a lot of emphasis on explaining you guys the fundamentals on why something is the way it is, why something is strong, why something is weak, why something counters something else, and so on. But one thing that I've realized playing in the recent few days, especially when I took like a few days off, I play again, I take a few days off, I play again, is that whenever I jump into the game again, I play like a new strategy, or I play something that people are, I don't know, not used to playing against for 100 games, or they haven't seen me play on stream yet a whole lot and so on, that people are very much thrown off their course, of their ideas, of like their gameplay, because I think most people don't have a really deep fundamental understanding of this is good because of this is weak because of this counters this I have to do this and that and so on. Like they don't actually fundamentally understand why things are the way they are and why they should be doing the things they're doing. I think most people are just, I don't know, taking a YouTube video, taking a stream, maybe they play versus opponents and their opponent does this and then they just copy what their opponent does and then it works for them, but they don't actually know why it works for them. And I kind of want to break that a bit, so I probably want to I want to go deeper into this fundamental understanding so you guys actually understand what is going on in the game. And it's not just you just copy the next Viper video and then that's it. Like I really want you guys to understand these things because we're like in the beta state of the game. All these numbers and the balance and that is like pretty much irrelevant. Like yes, it will make you win games at the moment, but having this fundamental understanding of why a trade is good, why a trade is bad, why it counters this or that is going to be so valuable just in the future. That is going to be valuable for years to come in this game, because a lot of these fundamental things, they won't change, or maybe they slightly change and then there's something new implemented in the future that's similar to this old thing, and you just have the understanding of that old thing and you can translate that to the new thing. That is essentially what made Hearthstone, for example, boring to me at some point, because I had all these fundamental understandings of all the things throughout the years, so every new thing was just like, well, I knew already how it worked. And I didn't have to practice it. I didn't have to learn it. I was just like, okay, this is the same thing as 4 years ago. This is the same thing I played last year. This is the same thing, but like different makeup on, right? And that is like my goal with this. That's why I'm not going to go gameplay. That's why I'm not going to go gameplay today. I'm not going to show you guys, well, you just position these units on this exact hex and so on, because I don't want you guys to just take the video and copy it and have no fundamental understanding and learn nothing from it. Now, let me go, if you guys like this or not like this. I assume a lot of people will probably be like, no, just give me the guide, just tell me what I have to do. But I also want to know how many of you guys are out there that do want to just learn more like deeper about the game. I'm gonna make videos in the future again showing more of my own gameplay and interesting matchups, but I also just happen to not have an interesting game with this deck because it just really isn't that interesting to begin with. You just have a bunch of rogues and revenants, jump the enemy team. Your main goal is to take down the first enemy unit, then you get the Revenant Shields, then your units survive, your units don't take damage anymore. Great, easy, you probably win. You play a mirror match, you want to take down the enemy healer units, because at some point with Dust and Revenant, like all the damage mitigation stuff that is happening, nobody will take any damage anymore, and if the guy that still has a Gazer alive, has a healing unit alive, will win in overtime. That's like the fundamental story of this mirror match. There's not too much to explain compared to like an Enchanter mirror or a Verdant Behemoth mirror with wall-off positionings and blocking units and whatnot. No. You wanna have your units jump together, focus down a unit, get the Revenant Shield, preferably focus down the enemy healer units. That's the goal with the deck. Now, if your opponent is playing something that is not like Rhamphyre-centric, if your opponent is playing something that is like Behemoth and Verdant-centric, things like that, you do wanna go for your own Rhamphyre option, by the way. And that's why we still have Rhamphyre in here. The Gyro team, very, very good versus other Rhamphyre teams. Relatively weak versus, well, anything else, really. But it has a really easy time of going into and going out of Rhamphyre, so you probably do have to, I don't know, take some coin flips in some matchups, because that's kind of just how this team is. That's why it is a very anti-Rhamphyre team. It is a very all-in anti-Rhamphyre team. And if you don't play versus Rhamphyre, you have to play Rhamphyre yourself. And there's a lot of anti-Rhamphyre strategies like this one out there as well. So that's why I'm not saying this is the best team in the game, but if you play with a lot of Rhamphyre teams, very, very good to play this. Now, on the gameplay side, how do you play your turns? How do you play your early game? How do you play your bonding? Like, one of the standard openings is Verminio into Verminio Rota plus one of the daggers to essentially just get a Revenant to Revenant Illuvians plus Rota. That is just a medium level strength opening, I would say. And then on turn 2, you can just go for Vermilia and the Lesser Volante. Then you have a Spore active, and Vermilia with Spore is a very, very strong tank in those turns, which is really, really good unless people are already opting into the Clumsy Augment, which a lot of people have been at the top end of the ladder to counteract this Spore. Essentially, yeah, just Clumsy means a unit that has Clumsy applied on it cannot dodge anymore. So that just counters the entire Spore trait, and it counters air. So your turn 1 of Verminio, Rota, and Dagger is fine. Then your turn 2 of Vermilia and Volante, giving you air and giving you Spore, a lot of dodge chance, would already be countered by people opting for this. So if people don't opt for this, you can go for the Spore option on the early game. And then on turn 3, you would just go like Gyro, Revo, and a Dagger, and plus a Grid Augment, or plus a Clumsy Augment, kind of just again depending on is your opponent playing Spore, are they not playing Spore, and whatnot. Also the anti-healing part, obviously, just generally good later on in the stages, even if they swap off Spore, / well, once there's a door reset, they have a Spore again. So to recap that, let's say option 1, Verminio, Rota, plus a Bond Verminio, turn 2 Vermilia, Volante, turn 3 Gyro, Revo, 20 cost Augment, 20 cost Grid Augment, very, very high power level, or 20 cost a Clumsy Augment that you can give to, I don't know, like a Revo or Rota preferably, because they have higher crit chance than Gyro, because they are rogues and the rogue trait is active while the Slayer trait is not active. And after that, you just play Mystic Illuvians, and you want to keep your Mystic Illuvians alive, meaning you want to give something like Untargetable to one of them, or like even the Health Core Augment and things like that. Like Mystic Illuvians should live until overtime, and then you can win with them, basically. Now, Adorius also gives you Spore, that is very, very good to have. Gazer, just like the fundamentally better overtime unit. At some point, you sell Apon and you play both of these, because Apon doesn't offer you a whole lot because you're playing rogues and not melee Illuvians. Now, there are some different openings people are going in these mirror matches. That are essentially playing more early game oriented augments, where for example you can do a Revo, Rota, and the 20 cost maladaptive augment already turn 1, just equip a ranger weapon, don't bond with it, and then on turn 2 you can go for like Verminio and Volante, then you still have like air and rogue and everything active, and yeah, like turn 2 Verminio Volante is 80 points, plus then a 20 cost Grid Augment. So to recap, the other option would be Rota, Revo on 1, with Maladaptive on, well, one of those two, and then turn 2 Verminio, Volante, and this Catalyst, and you go for Dust Revenant on turn 2 already. You have a really strong early game augment, you have the counter to the enemy Spore with the Clumsy, and yeah, that is essentially the other opening where you do deviate a bit from this standard line. Full recap on the second option in the mirror if your opponents are going for Spore. Rota, Revo, Maladaptive on turn 1, turn 2 Verminio, Volante, and Catalyst. Go for the Earth Dagger on the Verminio bonding to get a Revenant and a Dust. Turn 3, you just go for another Revenant Illuvian and a already upgraded Ranger suit. And then on turn 5, you can go Apon, a Gazer, and a Gyro after unequipping this suit. And then you do have your normal big setup with already the Grid Augment, with the counter healing, counter dodge augment. And then moving forward, you just, well, swap your Apon for Adorius to activate the Spore, eventually upgrade your Ranger, eventually just pump out all these augments. Vitality very good on the Mystic big Illuvians that are getting attacked first. Health Core, Redemption Core, Augment is kind of the same story, like the one that is just happened to be positioned, happened to be focused by the enemy. You want to keep it alive with this Augment, preferably you also want the grid buff on these Illuvians, as the way that these gyros, these hedgehogs target is, they jump on something, they target it with auto attacks, they roll away, and they don't retarget to the closest enemy, they keep attacking what they were attacking before, which is a very unique thing. So that's why this can be really, really good. Like maybe they just end up attacking a Gazer for the entire fight, because Gazer is relatively tanky, plus this, plus Mystic Shields, plus Gazer's own healing, plus maybe Adorius support. It really might be tanking the triple hedgehog setup of the enemy the entire fight. And then, yeah, like I said before, if you want to go Rhamphyre, you can essentially just substitute the Vermilion, or you can substitute... Yeah, I would say you mainly substitute out Vermilion and play Rhamphyre instead of that, and you still play some early game with essentially mainly cheap units. And then depending on the matchup, I would advise look at the previous video that I made where I talked more in depth about Rhamphyre and the different augment setups for Rhamphyre and things like that, and also the positioning on Rhamphyre with rogues together. It is mainly featuring Rota and Volante as well as the rogues supporting Rhamphyre. I don't think I want to go too deep into the Rhamphyre line with this deck in this video, because the previous video pretty much explains the exactly same thing. The only difference is that here you have more rogues instead of the supportive bulwark units and so on. So there's not too much different. It's just instead of placing those bulwark units, you just have more rogues to the left and to the right of Rhamphyre. You just have more rogues that have the same function that Rota and Volante have, like explained in the previous video that I made about the Rhamphyre/Enchanter combo of the team. And the same goes for the augments. Vitality Veil, Search Module, usually the way to go if you want to go for Rhamphyre and not for the Gyro win condition, if you feel like the Gyro win condition is not good enough. Now, Phantom/Revenant, it's kind of like the same question again. If the Inferno damage is enough of a win condition for you, you should go Revenant. If the Inferno damage is not enough of a win condition, if the enemy team has too much healing, then you have to go for Phantom, you have to go for Search Module, you have to try and one-shot the enemy Illuvians with the Rhamphyre ability and not with Inferno, because, well, maybe they just have a bunch of healing and have a bunch of shielding, and heal plus shield counters the Inferno trait, and then you have to lean heavier into the Phantom trait. Also, keep in mind, Revenant is only really OP strong if you can actually kill enemy units. And if the enemy is playing like Gnarls and Cardulogs and Titano, like those big tanks, Revenant probably won't help you much, because you probably won't be taking down those tanks if you don't have the extra damage of something like Phantom anyways. So I would say this was a bit of a shorter video and a bit of a different format, but I don't think there's like too much value in giving just like here have like 5 screenshots of how to position these rogues, because you just choose a side, you play them on one side so that the grid augment can buff your entire team. That is like a relevant part, and outside of that there really isn't too much to be said about positioning. You should keep in mind that these hedgehogs roll to the furthest enemy after, like, with their ability, so just actively be watching those fights, actively be watching where are they rolling, and just like check if you have to swap the side on your guys or not, but fundamentally try to have them focused on the first unit to get that Revenant proc, and that is it. There's really not too much to be said about positioning on this team. It is a very low skill, very easy to play team, and there we go. A bit of a shorter video, but this should certainly help you to beat Rhamphyre teams. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know about it in the comments, and I'll be more active on Twitch again, of course. I just took like a few days off, wasn't too happy about the meta essentially, not too happy about this team as well. I'm like not a big fan of playing this because it is so easy and there is like so little min-maxing and skill cap things that you can do from my perspective. But yeah, I'll be back. I think there's a lot of cool things and cool counters, and like I said, really big reminder, this is a Rhamphyre counter. This is not a beat the entire meta game deck. Keep that in mind. Very important. See you guys in the next one.